Welcome to the A to Z of Licensed Games, a series of vids about games that take something from something else. We're now on to the letter G, and guess what? I'm a big fat massive hypocrite. Last video I absolutely ripped into Fight Club for torturing a movie's plot into a terrible game narrative involving some complete no-mark who can't act for toffee, not to mention cheapening the whole product in general. And well, just look at what today's game is. 2006's The Godfather takes what many people would consider to be the greatest film ever made, puts you in the shoes of Joe Schmo who no one gives a toss about, and turns said movie into a sandbox game, the big genre of the time. You could easily consider it to be a similar sort of sacrilege. And yet I have played through this game multiple times and I find it as fun as all get out. The sandbox genre kinda lends itself to fun in any case, but I can't think of a good excuse as to why I've played this so much, and I really do mean so much. And actually screw it, you know, I can. It's one of the best sandbox games out there, and I'll stick by that. No-name player character aside, isn't he a look-a-lo? The plot largely follows the movie, and actually finds neat enough places to shoehorn our hero in, weirdly making the film seem suitable for a game adaptation. Case in point, our hero gets to place the gun in Louis' restaurant in preparation for Michael's sit-down with Sollozzo, he whacks poor old Paulie Gutto, travels with Tom Hagen to Hollywood and a meeting with Jack Waltz that doesn't end well, and he plays a rather big part in the baptism, which appropriately enough is the game's final and best mission. And in between all this there's a bunch of other shit involving his own plot and some other no-marks that aren't interesting in the slightest, but whatever. The game's pretty high class looks wise. You can see all the Benjamins that went into making those cutscenes and city streets, and holy Christ were there a lot of them. At the time this was one of the most expensive games ever made, and oh boy does it show. Of course there's only a small handful of interior environments, and chances are you'll see them all in the first hour of the game. Even the family compounds are all exactly the same, but you can't have it all. They got as much voice talent as they could too. James Caan and Robert Duvall are here, as is Abe Vigoda, John Martino, and even Marlon frickin' Brando would have been here if he hadn't died during production. But you can still hear him in this little Easter egg.
Like a misfortune on our heads. Well, that's life. Everybody's got their own tale of sorrow.
Ladies and gentlemen, Marlon Brando's final performance. Sadly there is one other fairly important guy missing to the point where EA couldn't even use his likeness, but, well, he took his business elsewhere. C'est la vie. I suppose I'm making the point that there are areas where this game is badly flawed. Unappealing missions, repetitive surroundings, disappointing voice talent. The Godfather license naturally drives expectations sky high, and you would expect these things to be a lot better. But ultimately you just have to get past that and take the game on its own merits, recognise what it does well, such as providing a pretty decent condensed version of 1940s New York for you to immerse yourself in. You occasionally have to plan your route out quite a bit, but it is a complex city. It works for the immersion. And also, it's this city where you, my friend, will become the biggest asshole the world has ever known. And being an asshole is why I love this game so damn much. Being an asshole is of course an important part of any sandbox game, and The Godfather gets an A+ in this regard. Why is that, you may ask? Well, it all boils down to extortion. One day, our hero steps into a place of business and tells the owner that they should consider coming under the Corleone's wing, and the answer he gets is unsatisfactory.
These are people who wander through the world shouting, "Kill me."
This just never gets old. I often go into places that I've already taken over just so I can pretend the bastard hasn't paid me this week and just beat the shit out of them again. Anyone who gets in my way on the street gets thrown into the cobblestones, regardless of who they are. And if I've got the drop on someone, then chances are I'll shoot their knee out and slowly torture them to death, seeing if they've got any last words before dying. Is that one? The people in this game certainly think so. They won't hesitate to comment on just how much of a complete bastard I am.
That cop you killed was a kind man, you bastard.
Which is what makes it all worthwhile. You don't even get this kind of feedback from Saints Row or GTA. I sincerely hope I don't have any sociopathic tendencies inside me, but if I do, they're given lease by this game in which I play as the bastard son of Richard Widmark from Kiss of Death. Mama always said I'd be no good. Now I don't know if I'd call this game a guilty pleasure or not. The ridiculousness of a Godfather game as a concept makes me really want to, but it is a good game. It looks fantastic and plays so well, with controls that make a lot of sense and very strong fighting and shooting mechanics. Using the white analog stick for punches is odd for a sandbox game, but it just works. It gives you so much more impact in the blows. The shootouts are also some of the best I've played in a sandbox game. Good cover, free aim, limb targeting, you know, what more could you ask for? It all helps make the game lots and lots of fun. The Godfather was marketed to hell, and I think there's about 500 different versions of this game on various platforms, but the shadow of the license has always seemed to hold it back from any major praise. But if you simply take it as a good sandbox game, as opposed to a faithful adaptation of a classic movie, then you'll be laughing. If you've had a really crappy day, then this is the game that I heartily recommend. Put it on and just be a complete asshole gangster for an hour. You'll thank me later for it. We have a lot of honourable mentions this time around, and a lot of them are games you all will know. First, well, let's just get this one out of the way. I suppose I should mention GoldenEye 007 for the N64, a game that a lot of people love. So many people would consider this the greatest licensed game ever made. Trouble is, you know, I've not played it all that much, and whenever I have, I've never really got on with it. I didn't have it when I was growing up. You know, that's kind of the same story I have with a lot of N64 games. I just don't really like the system that much. Still, there it is, so, you know, people don't complain. What can I say? I was a Mega Drive kid and PlayStation teen. Next up, here's a fine Ghostbusters game for the Mega Drive. The lack of Winston is kind of odd, and the game can sometimes be frustrating, but on the whole it's one of the MD's better early platformers, and the music's awesome. Still a game that's worth playing. And I suppose I should mention this Ghostbusters game too, released for many platforms. This is the C64 version. Depending on your gaming history, you'll probably either think of this as a classic or an absolute turkey, especially if you had the misfortune of playing it for the NES. I really liked it when I was very young, but yeah, it's a bit of a grind and it really hasn't held up, even more than most of these games. Here's a game though that has held up. Gremlins 2, the new batch, for the NES. I first played this when I did my NES compilation vids, and it was a belter then. A fine top-down mazy action game by Sunsoft, and you know what Sunsoft means. Very epic music. Pair that up with some decent gameplay, and you've got a winner. Sticking with the NES, here's a weird one. Golgo 13. You don't really get many games like this on the NES where you play as a hitman. You even get to snipe people. The gameplay is very rickety, and not being able to shoot while crouching is a cardinal sin, but the presentation and general mood is very out there. It's like a classic and gloomy 1970s spy show, which I suppose is appropriate, and is a feel that I really do like. And I've always had a soft spot for Victor Kai in any case. Okay, finally let's look at a couple of Spectrum titles. The Great Escape is one of the most celebrated of specky tie-in games. You have to figure out a way to break out of prison while sticking to the day's routine, finding little moments here and there to get to work in. A very interesting game. The only game on the specky that's like it, I think, is probably School Days. And lastly, Grange Hill. This is a game I used to play so much with my dad back when I was a kid. It's just a basic little adventure game at the end of the day where you have to retrieve Gotcha's Walkman, although it does feature one of the most depressing deaths in gaming history if you decide to go all Zammo and take a pusher's drugs. There is an empty look in his eye as he snatches the money from your hand. His face is pale and drawn, his body thin and unfed. He steals to keep his habit and makes addicts of children. He is dead, and soon you will be too. This game is fucking over. You should have just said no. Now you guys better damn well appreciate the lengths I had to go through to get this shitroom title on the go. Because really there was only one possible candidate, Gods and Generals, a first-person shooter released for the PC in 2003. For those of you who might not be aware, Gods and Generals was a 2003 film about the American Civil War, concentrating on Confederate General Stonewall Jackson, although this game just has you play as a regular foot soldier for the rebels. I explain all of this because, well, the film wasn't all that successful. It bombed at the box office for various reasons. The 3.5 hour running time certainly wouldn't have helped, but mainly it bombed because it wasn't very good. An incredibly long and dry regurgitation of Civil War events that completely ignores things like character or narrative. It appears as though Ted Turner spent $60 million on a film catered entirely towards Civil War enthusiasts and nobody else. And as for the game, well, God knows who that was supposed to cater for. Gods and Generals is regarded as one of the worst FPSs ever made. Websites peppered it with 1s and 2s, and those were the more generous reviews out there. So of course I expected it to be bad. But not this bad. Just look at it. To give you an idea of its contemporaries, it used the Liftech Jupiter engine, the same one used for No One Lives Forever 2 and Medal of Honor Pacific Assault. Now those aren't bad looking games for the time, but this? I think you could create a better looking FPS on the Atari 2600. I mean, I hardly need to say anything here. You can see for yourself just how many pennies and minutes were spent on this game's graphics. And they aren't even the worst thing about this game. The enemy's AI is, bluntly put, the worst I have ever seen. Half the time, if you're behind them, they won't even respond when you hit them. It's like, what's that scratching at my back? Ooh, that feels quite good. Ooh, oh crap, I'm dead. And the guys around them don't seem to care much either. Perhaps the Union simply employed a lot of deaf soldiers. I don't know anything about Civil War history. Soldiers frequently get stuck in the terrain as well, and they teleport all over the place. And sometimes, well, they like to get together, all into one spot. Here's a question for you. How many soldiers do you see in this picture? Just one, right? Well, let's find out. Well, I don't blame them for taking the opportunity to spread out a bit. It must have been hard to breathe in there. I just don't know what else to say, really. To be honest, even if the game had actually had more than 15 minutes of production time, it still wouldn't have been any good. The missions are basic and hideous, and they include things like getting a game over for not staying in a line and waiting to get shot. Accurate? Yes. Fun? No. Gods and Generals is utterly ghastly, and quite possibly the worst FPS I have ever played, and that's saying something. The only good thing I can say about it is that it made me nostalgic for the Battlegrounds Half-Life mod. And with that, it's time to put the locks on the letter G. Next time we'll be going through the letter H. The featured game will be something, well, it'll be something you won't expect at all. To be honest, almost none of the games I'm looking at here are massively well known, so at the very least it'll be a cool little journey into the obscure. Oh, and there'll also be text adventures, so keep tuned for that. But until then, thanks for watching, and wherever you are, whoever you may be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time.